Everyone, I'm back and I'm going to show you where we are. So to back up and get you up to date, cleaned and assembled the mold, then went in and put wax on it, then put mold release on it, sprayed it with PVA polyvinyl alcohol as a barrier, and then we put black gel coat on top of that. Now the black gel coat is polyester based, and we are using epoxy for the carbon fiber, or that's the plan. There were some concerns that there will not be good adhesion between the polyester gel coat and the epoxy-based carbon fiber. So we decided to run an experiment to see. So the first thing is, this has been sitting overnight. We did this late yesterday, last night, and when we left, it was still pretty, it wasn't as hard as I would have liked. Even though you put your finger on it and it didn't come off on your finger, which is the general test, it still seemed a little bit soft. So we decided to let it set overnight. Well, we came in this morning, and if you look, I'll put my finger, let's find a blank spot right there. All right, I put my finger on it. You can see it leaves a fingerprint, but there is nothing on my finger. That's the general rule. Now what we did was we only mixed 1% of MEKP with this because we didn't want it curing on us while we were trying to cover this entire area. So that's like the minimum acceptable, and the temperature wasn't overly hot. So maybe if we put 2% or something like that, it would have gotten a little more cured by now. I don't really think so, but we needed that because even with the 1%, we were kind of rushing. It was starting to cure as we were finishing. All right, so if you look, here's the area where we just put a rectangle of carbon fiber on there. Put epoxy on first, then one layer of carbon fiber, more epoxy, second layer of carbon fiber, and then rubbed a final layer of epoxy on top of that. Okay? So the idea is I'm going to pull this up and we're going to see how well it did or did not, the two things adhere to each other. Now, something about epoxy is it's more flexible than the gel coat. The gel coat's not really flexible. It's actually a bit rigid. And so what's going to happen is we're not using this part in the final piece because we've got a different nose that's going to go on here. So that's why we picked this area. When I lift this up, it is going to try to pull some of the gel coat up. So I'm going to see if I can do this while doing minimal amount of damage. Oh, and I did apply heat, there we go, to the epoxy. So you can see what happens with the gel coat. It cracks and breaks. So that's why I say it's not very flexible. So I'm putting my finger here to try to control how much and where it cracks and breaks. If this weren't a good mold, I would use a razor blade to score that, but I do not want to scratch my mold at all. All right, so there it comes. And as you can see, it's at least hard enough that when I press on it, it cracks. And it's almost there. There we go. All right. So here we have the carbon fiber. It's not completely cured. It takes longer than that, but it's cured enough to be a solid piece. And the reason we did this is we wanted a flat black finish, or at least a matte black finish. You see that a lot on high-end cars. We might scuff this a little bit to dull it even more than it is right now. Not sure. We're going to get it off and see what it looks like. One of the main reasons we did this is because we've been having issues with pinholes with straight epoxy, so we needed something to make sure we didn't get pinholes. I have some Duratec sun shield that I could have put on here, but then it would have a gloss finish, so then I would have to do something to get rid of the gloss finish. So instead I thought, you know what, I'm just going to use gel coat. I don't know how well gel coat does long term when it's like this. I think it'll do okay. We're going to find out. It'll be another experiment we run. All right, so the theory from people was that these two layers will not adhere to each other because, I don't know, because they say it won't. So the question is, what happens when I flex this? Now, I suspect when I flex this, what's going to happen is the gel coat's going to crack, because you saw it's pretty rigid and the epoxy's not. I can grab this epoxy and it's not easy to bend, but I can bend it and it doesn't break. It does bend. Now the other thing is, it's not completely cured. If we give it another day or two, it'll finish curing and it'll get harder and less flexible, but it is slightly flexible now. The other thing is I used a heat gun on this to get the temperature up so that it would cure faster. Otherwise, this morning, we know from experience that overnight, this epoxy doesn't get rock hard overnight. It gets somewhat hard, but it's still flexible. So this is a little more, it's like 3/4 in between where it would be if we hadn't done anything and we'd given it 2 days. All right, so I'm going to start with a small corner and see what happens. So if you look at this, there it is. I'm going to bend it, and you can see what happens is that, as expected, the gel coat cracks there. But the question is, are these two layers stuck to each other sufficient? Is there sufficient adhesion between the two? All right, so I'm actually going to break this. There we go. And it looks to me like those two are stuck to each other. I mean, I can't see that gel coat. I don't know. It looks to me like there's good adhesion between the layers there. I mean, maybe it's not perfect adhesion, but it's not easily peeling off or anything like that, which would be the worst case, is if the two just peeled off. Whoops. That was good. If the two just peeled off of each other. And I don't see that happening at all. Oh, the other thing is that if you look, that's PVA right there, that little shiny piece, the polyvinyl alcohol. So let me go ahead and peel that off, and that should just peel right off. Yep, and that does show something I was hoping was not the case. You can see that the gel coat is very glossy. I was hoping it would end up like a semi-dull finish right there, but it looks like that is the PVA that we're seeing. And if I peel off the PVA, there it goes. You can see it's glossy underneath. So we will have to scuff this to get rid of the gloss. Although if I was looking for a gloss finish, hey, that's not bad at all. Now, the thing about PVA is it's very, very hard to get on real smooth. And so what you'll see is, even though this is a pretty good finish, the PVA was not completely glossy. It had a slight texture to it. And so you can see that there is a little bit of texture on the surface. So we would have to color sand this a little bit at least. So the only difference is what grit of sandpaper do we use. If we wanted a very shiny surface, we'd use, you know, somewhere like 2,000 to 3,000 and polish it, and that would end up like a great gloss surface. I think we're going to use something like maybe 600. We might try 600 first and then 1,000 and see what happens. But anyway, any suggestions you have on what to try or do? Okay, so now we could also spray this with matte clear afterwards, but that kind of defeats the whole purpose. Our whole purpose was to get it to where we could pull the part out of the mold and not have to do anything to the part. Obviously, we're going to have to scuff it a little bit because of the gloss. We don't want the gloss, but we just have to degloss it, which is going to be way easier than doing any major sanding work. The other thing is the mold is not 100% perfect. It's in pretty good shape, but there are some known defects in the mold, so we would have to sand it no matter what. It's just a question of how much sanding do we have to do. All right, that's all I've got. I think this passed the test. Here, let me try it in the middle of this. Yeah, see, I mean, we have some flexibility in the gel coat as long as the epoxy is thick enough. The place where I broke it off, there was actually no carbon fiber. That was just pure epoxy. All right, but the places where it's supported by carbon fiber, I mean, look at that. I actually wasn't even sure that the gel coat would do that. Could be because it's not 100% cured, but it actually should be because it was air inhibited. So on the back side, it was air inhibited by the epoxy and the carbon fiber, and then on the front side, it was air inhibited by the mold itself. Okay, and this is flexible because it's only 2 layers of carbon fiber. Through our experiment, we found out that 2 layers is the bare minimum to get something to hold its shape, but then it's still flexible. So if you want to have it to where it's not so flexible, add a 3rd layer and it makes a world of difference. Okay, that's all I've got for now. So like, subscribe, hit the alert, hit the thanks if you want to donate, and if you don't like what we're doing, you don't know jack. Bye.